You wake up late, you feel rushed, you feel behind before the day has even started. You grab your phone, you check your messages, you check the news, and already before you have eaten, before you have taken a breath, the world is inside your head. Now imagine something different. Imagine a place in the mountains of Japan. It is 4 in the morning. The sky is completely dark. The air is cold and quiet. Inside a wooden monastery, a bell rings. Soft, steady, patient. And one by one, men in gray robes stand up from their sleeping mats. No one checks a phone. No one speaks. They move through the dark hallways in silence, and they sit. Just sit. In complete stillness. For the next hour, they breathe. They listen. They do nothing else. No punishment, no rule imposed from outside. This is the most important hour of their day. This is a graded lesson for English learners who love ideas that calm the mind. Today, we are going to explore why Zen monks have been waking up at 4 in the morning for over 1,000 years. We are going to look at what happens in the body and the mind during that quiet hour before the world begins. And we are going to ask a simple but powerful question. What would happen if you tried it too? Here's the truth. Most of us have never really experienced the early morning. We have experienced the rushed morning, the tired morning, the alarm, snooze alarm morning. But the still morning, the quiet morning, the morning that belongs only to you, that is something most people have never tried. And that is exactly what the monks have protected for centuries. By the end of this lesson, you will understand something that has nothing to do with waking up early and everything to do with the quality of your mind. You will see that stillness is not doing nothing, it is doing the most important thing. And you will carry a practice that has been trusted, tested, and passed down for over 1,000 years. Because stillness is where you begin. Stillness is where you begin. If this kind of lesson speaks to you, if you love ideas that are slow and deep and worth sitting with, subscribe right now. There is more coming. Let's begin. Lesson 1. The hour that belongs to no one. To understand this practice, you first need to know where it comes from. In the year 1244, a Japanese monk named Dogen built a monastery deep in the mountains of Fukui, Japan. He called it Eiheiji. The name means Temple of Eternal Peace. Dogen had studied in China. He had learned the strictest form of Zen practice. And when he came back to Japan, he built a place where that practice could live forever. Today, Eiheiji is still standing. It is still running. And the monks who live there still wake up at 4 in the morning, just as they did almost 800 years ago. Listen carefully. This is not tradition for the sake of tradition. Dogen did not choose 4 in the morning randomly. He chose it because of something he understood deeply, something that people across many different cultures have known for a very long time. The hour before sunrise is different from every other hour of the day. In the ancient Indian tradition, this time is called Brahma Muhurta. It means the hour of the Creator. Teachers and healers and thinkers across centuries believe that this hour, the dark, quiet hour before light, was the best time for the mind to receive, to think, to become clear. Not because of magic, but because of something very simple. The world has not started yet. At 4 in the morning, there are no emails waiting. There are no conversations happening. There are no decisions being asked of you. The streets are empty. The people around you are sleeping. And for that reason, your mind has something it almost never gets during the rest of the day? Space. Think about what happens from the moment most people wake up. They wake up and immediately check their phone. They read messages before they have said good morning to themselves. They see news before they have taken a single quiet breath. By the time they get out of bed, the world is already living inside their head. The monks wake up and first check their mind. Not their messages, their mind. That simple difference changes everything that follows. The Eiheiji monks begin their day with a practice called Zazen, seated meditation. They sit on a small round cushion called a zafu. Their back is straight. Their hands rest gently in their lap. Their eyes are half open, looking at the floor a short distance ahead. And they breathe in, out, in, out. The goal is not to empty the mind. They simply watch their thoughts the way you might watch clouds moving across a sky. Not grabbing, not pushing, just watching. For 60 minutes, the world outside does not exist. You might be thinking, I could never do that. I could never wake up at 4. I am not a monk. I do not live in a mountain monastery. And that is fair, but stay with this idea for a moment, because the lesson here is not about what time the alarm rings. What matters is what you do with the first quiet minutes of your day. Whether those minutes belong to the world or whether they belong to you. The monks chose 800 years ago that the first hour would always belong to them. The hour before sunrise belongs to no one. That is why it belongs to you. Lesson 2. What is happening inside you? You might think the monks wake up early because of faith, because of rules, because that is simply what monks do. But there is something else happening in that quiet 4 o'clock hour. Something that has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with the biology of your brain. Let's talk about what is actually going on inside your body when you wake up. When you open your eyes in the morning, your brain does not simply switch on like a light. It wakes up slowly in stages. And in the first 20 to 30 minutes after waking, something very specific happens. Your body releases a hormone called cortisol. Now, most people hear the word cortisol and think of stress. But this particular cortisol release is different. Scientists call it the cortisol awakening response. And it is not a stress signal. It is a readiness signal. Your brain is saying, I am awake, I am alert, I am ready to think clearly. This is one of the most focused windows of the entire day. Stay with me. Because here's the part that matters. That window, that sharp, clear, ready state your brain enters in the early morning, it is sensitive. It responds to whatever you give it first. If you give it noise, it processes noise. If you give it anxiety, it processes anxiety. If you give it stillness, it processes stillness. The monks, without knowing the word cortisol, without knowing anything about neuroscience, understood this completely. They understood that what enters the mind first in the morning shapes the mind for hours afterward. So they protected that window every single day for 800 years. There is another layer to this. When your brain is not being pulled in any direction, when there are no notifications, no voices, no tasks demanding your attention, a specific network inside your brain becomes active. Scientists call it the default mode network. It is the part of your brain that becomes most alive in quiet moments. And what does it do? It connects ideas. It solves problems you did not know you were working on. It processes emotions you have not had time to feel. It generates creative thoughts. It builds your sense of who you are. It is not nothing, it is everything. Most people never give their default mode network a chance to work. They fill every quiet second with a screen, a sound, a scroll. The monks give it a full hour every morning before the sun rises. Consider this. There was once a young university student who had failed an important exam. The night before the next exam, she was so anxious she could not sleep. She woke up at 4 in the morning, not by choice, but because her mind would not let her rest. And instead of reaching for her phone, she simply sat in the dark of her small room and breathed. No meditation technique, no formal practice. She just sat. 20 minutes passed, then 30, and something strange happened. The anxiety did not disappear, but it became quieter. It moved to the back of the room, so to speak. And in the front of her mind, a kind of clarity appeared. She felt the difference between being afraid of the exam and being prepared for it. She had not studied in those 30 minutes. She had simply been still, and her brain had done the rest. This is not silence for its own sake, not boredom, not wasted time. Your brain in the early morning quiet is like water that has stopped moving. When water moves constantly, you cannot see to the bottom. When it becomes still, everything becomes clear. Before the world speaks to you, speak to yourself, or better yet, say nothing at all. And listen to what your own mind has been trying to tell you. Lesson 3, not punishment, devotion. When people hear wake up at 4 in the morning, the first feeling is usually resistance. That sounds hard. That sounds like something for soldiers or monks or people with extraordinary willpower, not for regular people, not for me. And that reaction is completely understandable because most of us have been taught, without anyone saying it directly, that doing something difficult in the morning means punishing yourself. That discipline is something you force on yourself because you are not good enough as you are. That waking up early is a kind of suffering you accept in exchange for results. The monks do not see it that way at all. Hear me on this. There is a man named David Goggins. He is a former United States Navy SEAL. He is known for running ultramarathons, for pushing his body past the point where most people would stop, for waking up before 4 in the morning every single day to train in the dark. People look at him and think that man is punishing himself. That man is at war with his body. But Goggins himself says something different. He says the early morning is the one time of day that is completely his. No one can take it. No one can interrupt it. The dark, the cold, the silence. Before sunrise, for him, that is freedom. Not punishment, freedom. Now consider Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the most respected Zen teachers of the modern world. A Vietnamese monk who has spent his life teaching mindfulness and peace. He does not wake up early to push himself. He wakes up early to be gentle with himself. He walks slowly in the morning. He breathes deeply. He touches the ground with care. For him, the early morning practice is an act of love toward his own mind. Two very different men, two very different styles, but the same understanding underneath. They do not wake up at 4 in the morning because they have to. They wake up because they choose to. That word choose changes everything. When you are forced to do something, your body holds tension. Your mind resists. Even if you do it, part of you is fighting against it. But when you choose something, when you decide that this hour is a gift you are giving to yourself, the experience is completely different. The same cold morning, the same dark room, but a different relationship with it. If you wake up anxious because the alarm went off, that is one morning. If you wake up knowing you chose this, knowing this hour is yours, knowing that what you do in the next 60 minutes will shape how you think for the next 16 hours, that is a completely different morning. A busy morning feels productive but leaves you empty. A still morning feels slow but fills you completely. Think about the difference between going to a dinner you were forced to attend and going to a dinner you were excited about. The food is the same, the room is the same, but your experience is worlds apart. The monks choose their 4 o'clock morning the way you might choose a meal you love, not reluctantly, willingly, with something close to gratitude. If your practice in the morning feels like suffering, you are doing it with the wrong mind. If it feels like a gift, even a small and quiet gift, you are beginning to understand what the monks have understood for a very long time. The practice is not hard. The relationship with the practice is what makes it hard or easy. And that relationship is something you can choose this morning, tomorrow morning, every morning after that. Lesson 4, the noise the monks already knew about. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The Zen monks of Eiheiji have been waking up at 4 in the morning since the year 1244. That is almost 800 years of pre-dawn silence. 800 years of sitting still before the world begins. 800 years of protecting the quiet mind. And they started all of this over 700 years before the first smartphone was invented. Now think about this. What was the noise they were protecting themselves from back then? There were no notification sounds, no social media feeds, no breaking news alerts, no group chats buzzing through the night. So what did the monks understand about noise that we are only beginning to understand now? They understood that the most dangerous noise is not the noise outside. It is the noise inside. The human mind left without any practice, without any anchor, does not naturally rest. It replays yesterday, it worries about tomorrow, it argues with people who are not in the room, it makes lists. It circles back. It starts a thought and loses it and starts again. This is the noise the monks were already working with. The noise that exists not in the world, but between your ears. The world we live in today has simply added a new layer on top of that noise. A very loud, very fast, very colorful layer that we carry in our pockets and place on our bedside tables and check before we have fully opened our eyes. Consider a man who worked in an office in a busy city. He woke up every morning already tired, not because he had not slept, but because the moment he opened his eyes, he opened his phone. And his phone opened the world. Messages from colleagues, news that made him anxious, social media posts that made him feel like he was somehow behind in life even before breakfast. He was not a sad man. He was not a bad man. He was simply a man who had never experienced the first hour of his day without noise. One week, almost by accident, he left his phone charging in another room. And on Tuesday morning, he woke up and there was nothing to reach for. So he sat on the edge of his bed. He looked at the window. The sky was still dark. The street below was quiet. He sat there for maybe 15 minutes doing nothing at all. And when he finally stood up, he noticed something odd. He felt like himself, not rushed, not behind, not anxious. Just himself. He woke up, he moved, he breathed. That was enough. The monks knew about noise long before we had screens, and their answer was always the same: not more noise to cover the noise, not distraction to escape the noise. Silence. Chosen, deliberate, protected silence. When life is noisy, most people add more noise. When life is noisy, the monks go deeper into silence. No mountain monastery is required to understand this. No need to give up your phone forever. You only need to give it up for the first 20 minutes of your morning. Let those 20 minutes be quiet. Let them be slow. Let them belong to you. If this lesson is landing somewhere real in you, if something in these words is touching something you already knew but had forgotten, hit subscribe. There is more like this coming. More lessons that go slow, that go deep, that ask you to think rather than react. And every one of them begins in stillness. Lesson 5, the anchor. There is a question that comes up whenever people talk about morning routines, and it is a fair question. What exactly should I do in those early quiet minutes? Should I meditate? Should I journal? Should I exercise? Should I read? Should I just sit there and breathe? The honest answer from the Zen tradition is simpler than you might expect. It does not matter very much what you do. What matters is that you do the same thing every morning without negotiating. Let me make this simple. Your brain spends enormous energy on decisions. Every morning when you wake up, if you have no fixed practice, your brain begins making small choices immediately. Should I get up now or in 5 minutes? Should I check my phone? Should I make coffee first or shower first? Should I exercise today? Each of these small decisions cost mental energy. And that energy spent before you have even left your bedroom is energy that cannot be used for the things that matter most to you later in the day. A fixed morning ritual removes this cost completely. When you know exactly what comes next, your brain does not have to decide. It simply follows. And in that following, something unexpected happens. The mind relaxes. Not because it is doing nothing, but because it knows exactly where it is going. The monks at Eiheiji wake up at 4. They wash their faces. They walk in silence to the meditation hall. They sit in that exact order every single day. Their brains do not fight the morning. They have no reason to. The path is already known. Robin Sharma, a writer who has spent many years studying what he calls the victory hour. The first hour of the morning before the rest of the world wakes up describes this idea simply. He says that when you own your morning, you own your day. Not because of what you accomplish in those early hours, but because of who you become in them. A person who starts the day with intention, with quiet, with a sense of direction. People who rush into the day are controlled by the day. People who begin in stillness control how they meet the day. Now think about a woman with 3 young children. Every morning was a small storm. Someone needed breakfast. Someone could not find their shoes. Someone was crying before 7 o'clock. She loved her children completely, but she had no time that was hers. No moment of quiet. No space to simply exist as herself rather than as a mother, a cook, a problem solver, a peacemaker. 1 month, she decided to try something small. She began waking up 30 minutes before her children. She made 1 cup of coffee. She sat at the kitchen table. No phone, no planning. She simply sat and drank her coffee in the silence of the house before anyone else was awake. It was not dramatic. It was not life-changing in an obvious way. But she said this: those 30 minutes became the most important 30 minutes of her day, not because of what she did in them, but because they were hers, completely, quietly, peacefully hers. And that feeling of having something that belonged only to her carried through everything that came after. No monastery is required, no special cushion, no particular breathing technique, nothing complicated. You need a small, fixed, quiet practice. Something simple that you do the same way every morning. Something that signals to your brain, this time belongs to me. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even 5. When you know what comes next, your mind can finally rest. That is the practice. That is where stillness begins. Lesson 6, 1,000 mornings. Almost 2,000 years ago, a man named Marcus Aurelius woke up every morning before his duties began and wrote in a private journal. He was the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world at the time. He had armies to command, decisions to make, people who needed things from him every hour of every day. And yet every morning before any of that began, he wrote. Not reports, not plans, not orders. He wrote to himself. Questions, reflections, reminders about how to live, how to stay patient, how to remain humble when the world was telling him he was great. Those private morning pages became what we now call meditations, one of the most widely read books on how to live a good life. And they were never meant to be read by anyone but him. Marcus Aurelius did not know about Zen. He lived in Rome, not Japan. He had never heard of Dogen or Eiheiji, but he understood the same thing. That the early morning, the quiet time before the world arrives, was the right time to meet yourself honestly. Read that again. The right time to meet yourself honestly. Not the version of yourself that performs for other people. Not the version that answers emails and solves problems and says the right things in meetings. The real version. The version that lives underneath all of that. The part of you that has questions, that gets tired sometimes, that wants something more than what a busy day can ever give. Marcus Aurelius found that version of himself in the early morning. The Zen monks find that version of themselves at 4 in the morning. And the science gives us a reason why. When you repeat the same practice every morning, day after day, week after week, something physical begins to happen inside your brain. Neural pathways, the connections between brain cells, become stronger. The more you use a path, the easier it becomes to walk. This is what scientists mean when they talk about neuroplasticity. Your brain is not fixed, it changes. It responds to what you do repeatedly. And a brain that is trained every morning to find stillness, to slow down, before speeding up to meet the day with intention rather than reaction, becomes a different brain over time. One morning of stillness leaves you a little calmer. 30 days in, you begin to feel different. After one full year, 365 mornings, you are simply not the same person you were when you started. One morning of stillness changes nothing. 1,000 mornings changes everything. Many people wait for quiet to find them. They think when my life slows down, I will start a morning practice. When the children are older, when work is less busy, when things settle. The Zen monks do not wait for quiet to find them. They go looking for quiet before the world wakes up. They do not wait for the right conditions. They create the right conditions. Every single day before sunrise. This is the compound effect of the early morning. Not dramatic, not instant, but deep and real and permanent. If you practice 5 minutes of silence every morning for 1 year, you will have given yourself over 30 hours of stillness, 30 hours of meeting yourself, 30 hours of training your brain to begin from a place of calm, not in one sitting, not in a retreat, 5 minutes at a time every morning, quietly adding up. Think about where you want to be 1 year from now, not in your career, not in your bank account, in your mind, in the quality of your thoughts, in your ability to sit with difficulty without being broken by it, in your capacity to be present with the people you love. If you want that version of yourself, if that sounds like something worth having, the path begins here, in the quiet, before the sun rises, before the world asks anything of you. That is where everything begins. Lesson 7, the beginner's mind. There is a concept in Zen Buddhism that is very old and very simple. It is called Shoshin. In English, we translate it as beginner's mind. And what it means is this: the mind that approaches something as if for the first time, without assumptions, without expertise, without the weight of everything it already knows. A beginner does not judge whether they are doing it right. A beginner does not compare today's practice to last week's practice. A beginner simply arrives, sits, breathes, and begins. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master who spent his life teaching mindfulness to ordinary people in ordinary circumstances, often said that the most important thing about a morning practice is not how long it is or how perfectly you do it. The most important thing is that you show up, that you arrive, that you treat each morning as if it is the first morning you have ever sat in silence. Pause for 1 second, because this idea matters more than it might seem. Most people who try a morning practice stop after a few weeks, not because it did not work, but because they begin to judge it. They sit for 10 minutes and think I was distracted the whole time. That was not good meditation. I kept thinking about work. I kept thinking about what I need to buy at the market. My mind would not stay still. And so they decide they are not good at it, and they stop. But this is a misunderstanding of what the practice actually is. The practice is not having a perfectly quiet mind. The practice is returning. You get distracted, you return. You start thinking about tomorrow, you return. You feel restless, you return. The returning is the practice, not the stillness, the returning to stillness again and again and again. The monks at Eiheiji have been doing this for centuries, and they still get distracted during Zazen. A senior monk once said that the difference between a beginner and an experienced practitioner is not that the experienced practitioner stops having thoughts. The difference is that the experienced practitioner returns faster, more gently, without judgment. He returned, he breathed, he began again. That was the whole practice. Readiness is not required. The right conditions are not required either. No quiet house, no special room, no perfect morning. The monks in 1244 did not have perfect conditions. They had cold wooden floors and a bell before sunrise, and they sat anyway. You have right now. You have tomorrow morning. You have a chair or a floor or an edge of your bed. You have 5 minutes or 10 or even 3. And you have the only thing the practice actually requires: the willingness to arrive, to sit, to breathe, to return when you drift, and to begin again. The practice does not ask you to be perfect. No experience is needed. No knowledge of technique. It only asks one thing: show up. The beginner's mind is not a lower form of the practice. In Zen, it is considered the highest form, because the beginner's mind is always open, always fresh, always ready to receive something new. Thich Nhat Hanh said it this way: each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most. Not what you did last week, not what you failed to do yesterday. This morning. This breath. This quiet moment before the day begins. That is the whole practice. That is all it has ever been. Lesson 8. What will you do tomorrow morning? We have come a long way together in this lesson. We have walked through the dark hallways of Eiheiji at 4 in the morning. We have looked at what science says about the first quiet minutes of the day. We have sat with the idea that discipline can be devotion, that ritual can be freedom, that a beginner's mind is the most powerful mind of all. And now we arrive at the only question that actually matters. What will you do tomorrow morning? Not next week, not when life slows down, not when the kids are older or the project is finished or the apartment is cleaner. Tomorrow morning. When the alarm goes off or before it goes off, what will you choose to do with the first minutes of your day? Here's what most people miss. They finish a lesson like this one feeling something, something real, a warmth, a sense of possibility, a quiet desire to try something new. And then they go to sleep. And when tomorrow morning arrives, cold and dark and early, that feeling is gone. The phone is right there. The comfort of the bed is right there. And the moment passes. And the day begins the way every other day has begun. And the lesson becomes just another thing they once listened to. No criticism is intended here. It is simply what happens to almost everyone, almost every time. The monks understood this too. This is why they have a bell. Not because they want to make noise in the early morning, but because the bell makes the choice for them. It removes the negotiation. There is no lying in bed wondering whether today is the day to start. The bell rings, you get up. That is the agreement you have already made with yourself. You do not have a monastery bell, but you can make an agreement with yourself tonight. Not a complicated agreement, not a dramatic one. A small, honest, specific agreement. Tomorrow morning, I will wake up 15 minutes earlier than usual. I will not check my phone. I will sit somewhere quiet. I will breathe. I will give those 15 minutes only to myself. That is it. That is the whole agreement. The practice does not require becoming a monk, nor waking at 4 in the morning if that is not your life. Taking back the first quiet minutes of your day is the whole idea. Choosing just once to meet yourself before you meet the world. The monks at Eiheiji have made this choice every single morning for almost 800 years. Marcus Aurelius made this choice in Rome 2,000 years ago. Thich Nhat Hanh has made this choice every morning of his long life. David Goggins makes this choice in the dark before most cities are awake. Different people, different lives, but they share this one thing. They chose the morning before the morning chose them. Perfection is not the goal. Consistency from day one is not required. Willingness is. Willing to try, willing to sit, willing to return the way the monks returned, the way Thich Nhat Hanh taught. with gentleness and without judgment, even after days or weeks of missing the practice. The silence will be there tomorrow morning. It has been there every morning of your life, waiting, patient, unchanged. The noise comes and goes, the silence remains. Stillness is where you begin. It was always waiting for you. It is waiting for you now. It will be waiting for you tomorrow at 4 or 5 or 6 or whenever you choose to arrive. It does not care what time you show up. It only cares that you do. Tomorrow morning, the silence will be there again, waiting. Before we end, let us hold the lessons of this video together, not as a list to remember, but as a feeling to carry. We started in the dark, a monastery bell ringing at 4 in the morning, monks rising from their sleeping mats in silence, moving through cold hallways toward the meditation hall, sitting, breathing, meeting the day before the day had a chance to meet them. And we asked a simple question. What do they know that most of us have forgotten? The answer was not complicated. It never is with the most important things. 1. Wake before the world wakes you. The hour before sunrise is not wasted time. It is the most protected time you have. The monks understood this 800 years ago. Your brain understands this now. Give the first quiet minutes of your day to yourself before you give them to anyone else. 2. Stillness is not doing nothing. It is doing the most important thing. When you sit in silence, your brain connects ideas, processes, emotions, and builds clarity that no busy hour can produce. The monks did not sit still because they had nothing to do. They sat still because they understood that stillness was the most productive act of the morning. 3. Discipline is not punishment. It is devotion to yourself. Waking up early, choosing quiet over comfort, building a morning ritual, these are not acts of suffering. They are acts of love toward the person you are becoming. The monks do not dread 4 in the morning. They choose it every day with something close to gratitude. 4. One morning changes nothing. Begin anyway. You will miss days. You will sleep late. You will have mornings where the practice falls apart completely. That is not failure. That is being human. The beginner's mind returns without judgment. The bell rings again tomorrow, and the silence will be waiting patient and unchanged, ready for you to begin again. And so can you. Whatever your life looks like right now, however busy, however noisy, however far from a mountain monastery in Japan, you can take back the first quiet minutes of your morning. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly. Just for yourself. Stillness is where you begin. It always has been. It always will be. If this lesson gave you something worth keeping, share it with someone who needs a little more quiet in their life. And leave a comment below. What time do you wake up? And how do you spend your first 10 minutes? I would genuinely love to know. Keep listening daily. This is how English learners grow. One lesson, one breath, one morning at a time. See you in the next lesson.